You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. The theme of today's show is new toys. It's the B&H Photography Summer of 2020 Gearcast. And to add additional wallops of insight into today's discussion, we welcome Kevin Rickert, who is a senior sales trainer at B&H Photo. And if you've ever been blown away by the level of knowledge of our B&H sales associates, you have to thank Kevin and his team for that. So Kevin, welcome to our show. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be exciting and fun.
Well, I don't know if it is, but we'll try our best. Anyway, let's jump right into things. And we're going to go alphabetically here by company. And there's a lot to talk about. And alphabetically speaking, the first company is Canon. And obviously, it's going to be two new cameras, the Canon EOS R5 and EOS R6. And I actually participated in the videos that we produced prior to the introduction. So I had hands-on with both cameras and all of the lenses we're going to be speaking about. Kevin, did you have a chance to get hands-on on any of these things yet?
Yeah, I got hands-on with the Canon EOS R5 and the R6. I participated in the live stream event that we had with the experts as well as the Q&A.
All right. What gets you about these? First, let's talk about the two cameras. We have the R5 and R6, and the big mama is the R5, and that's 45 megapixel, 8K and 4K, all kinds of great stuff on that. The R6, it looks just like it. It's 20 megapixel, 4K. It's an amazing camera by itself, and really depending on whether you need high resolution or your video applications. What is your takeaway from the R5 and R6?
Honestly, between the R5, it has 8K, it does RAW, which is really exciting if you have a computer to do that.
Yes.
But what really has got me is like the R6 on its own, because any other time, I feel that the R6 would have been like a really good camera. Yes, it's 20 megapixels, not 45, but it's really solid. 4K 60, the full HD at 120. It's the same speed as the R5, doing 12 with mechanical shutter, 20 with electronic, same focusing system. So I kind of feel like the R6 is a little bit overlooked when it comes down to it, because not everyone needs 45 megapixels or 8K recording.
Sure.
But it's both cameras together are just amazing. Like I tried with the slowing down the shutter, like dragging it and seeing how good I could get a handheld shot. That was fun.
The image stabilization systems on both of the cameras are really, really nice. They work.
Yes. It's probably I probably would say it's probably one of the best full frame, internal stabilizations out there currently. That's always subject to change based on what comes out. But as of right now, I think Canon really nailed it on that. And just the autofocus system is really, really, really good.
Yeah. Again, we're doing things with frisbees and balls going back and forth and stuff like that, and the tracking was amazing, dead on. And people are asking, what about blackout and stuff? I wasn't even really aware of it. To me, I was just astonished. It was almost like watching a motion picture going by in the viewfinder, where especially if you had face recognition or something like that. You know exactly what's going on. As you're taking the pictures, you're getting it. It's actually happening, and it's locked and it's dead on. You also mentioned something that I think is important to repeat, and that is that just because a camera is only 20 megapixels, doesn't make it a squirt. That's still, you can say, an extremely capable of camera. And the truth of the matter is, even though it's really nice to know that you can crop in real deep into an image if you have 40 plus megapixels, for most of us and for most of the applications, even if you're a pro, how often do you really need that much data? And as you mentioned, you need a support system to be able to carry all that data and process it. You need larger, faster, stronger computers and everything else. So that's a big matter. And I would say that if anybody's looking at the R5, R6, don't let the megapixels alone make you think that you're settling if you pick an R6. That might actually be the very best camera for you. Mm-hmm. So anyway, other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at them, it's just like, it's like exactly what you said. You have the R6 and it's 20 megapixels. And when you look at it, think about it this way. The flagship camera that Canon has, 1DX Mark III, How many megapixels is that? 20.
Uh-huh.
So it's not like 45 megapixels is a certain, for people, large prints, such like that. And also kind of relates to the 8K that it's capable of doing because you need that resolution to do so. But the R6 I think it's just a little bit, it's in the shadow when it really shouldn't be. That's my opinion.
What do you think in terms of maybe the bigger picture with Canon? Are these two cameras just furthering the new lines of mirrorless cameras, or are they here to replace something?
I feel like that it's moving in that direction, that there's going to be some trimming on the DSLR side from Canon, because if you look at it, how many entry-level cameras do they have? They have this T7i, this T8i, T7, and it's just SL3, and it's just so many choices that it could probably be streamlined. And also thinking, when I did the Q&A session, one of the questions I was asked that I took the weekend to think about after I did it was, a lot of people have been asking for a while, is mirrorless the future? And when you stop and think about it for a second, there's probably a handful of camera brands out there. I think there's, if you count them, who've produced DSLRs that are still around, there's probably 6 or 7, probably I think 7. How many of them are only making DSLRs? Not a lot.
Right.
Everybody else is mirrorless. Leica, has mirrorless and rangefinders, but for the most part, yeah, I think mirrorless is becoming. I mean, it's been out for 10 years, mirrorless cameras. So I think we're just seeing all these companies saying, you know what, everybody wants us to have a mirrorless camera, and Canon just said, you know what, we're going to have a good offering, the R5 and R6, and we're going to put all the produced lenses for the system. So,
well, that's another thing. Look at, all the lenses that have come out this year, they're all for that series, all for that system. So,
yeah,
sure,
another clue.
Yep.
And speaking of which, we want to jump to some of the lenses that Canon has announced. I found. Alan, you want to jump on in there?
Sure. The first one we have on the list is the RF 100 to 500. That's the f4.5 to 7.1 LIS USM, image stabilized. Again, Kevin and I, we both handle all of these lenses, so we can talk about it firsthand. This lens is really nice. The zoom range is beautiful on it. It's actually very manageable. If you handle long lenses, anything, in my opinion, longer than 300 millimeter, tends to get a little bit squirrely, especially depending if there's a lot of action or a lot of movement, if underneath your feet even. But I didn't find any kind of a problem shooting with this. I was going from 100 to 500, and very rarely was I aware of the fact that I was hand-holding something that was so long. I was able to remain with my subject, whether it was moving or static, and frame well, and keep the subject where I wanted within the frame. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the camera and lens are real well balanced, and the image stabilization system between the camera and the lens gives you, I think, about 7.5 stops of stabilization. That enables you to do some pretty good work out there without a tripod.
The RF line is probably one of the best well-balanced systems, because the way that they put the rear element closer to the mount is that you pick up these lenses and it just feels like almost weightless. Like, I'm like, wow, this feels so great. Especially with the 70-200 2.8 that they have. It's remarkable. You can handhold it all day. It feels completely different because it's not front heavy, and that makes a big difference in the design of the camera bodies and the lenses that they put out. It's amazing. And then one thing that's interesting, did you get a chance to play with the teleconverter on the 100 to 500?
Yes. Not only that, I got to use the teleconverter on the 6 and 8 and 800 millimeter lenses as well. So yeah, I used them.
Nice. Because one thing that you pick up from the 100 to 500 and 300 and the teleconverter is that it only works for a certain zoom range, 300 to 500 on there, which is a little bit interesting. But a lot of people are going to be like, but why does it do that? It's because Canon knows that they want to compromise. They didn't want to compromise on the size. So they were like, listen, if you want a teleconverter, we could do it, but your zoom range is a little bit shorter. It's only going to work from 300 to 500. So you get, depending on which teleconverter you use, but you could get decent reach out, much more decent reach than native. But it's a really interesting thought process they have. They really want to go after thoughtful design with their lenses. There may be some compromises, but hey, that, for example, 70-200, people are asking if that teleconverter should work. They don't work because of that compromise. They wanted a small, lightweight lens for that system, and and it shows. It's sharp. It's just, and pairing it with the R5, it's going to be phenomenal. Honestly.
Oh yeah. By the way, another thing worth mentioning about that, the 100 to 500 millimeter lens, depending on what focal length you're set at, it focuses down to just under 3 feet, and you can get the magnification range is as close as 1/3 life size, which is pretty cool to do because these lenses typically, longer lenses, especially once you get past 300, they don't focus that close. And this one actually does. So they accomplish a lot of little things along the way. Any other thoughts on this particular one, the 100 to 5?
No, I think it's a really good, with 100 to 500s, I think it's a really good for like wildlife photography. It's because it's weather resistant. People who are doing sports and such like that, if they don't need the wide open aperture as much, but also landscapes. A lot of people kind of sleep on the whole idea of a 100 to 400 or 100 to 500 zoom range for landscapes, and it's because you get a different look. Yeah, it's really nice.
You're right. Too many people ignore the fact that you could do amazing landscapes with really long lenses. You just have to change how you're looking at your subject and from where you're photographing it.
Yeah.
The next lens on the list is the Canon RF 85mm f2 macro IS STM. This is a nice lens. It's compact. It's an 85mm macro, goes to half life size, focuses down to 1.15 feet. And I tell you, the imaging out of this was quite nice. I was doing some wide aperture at f2 and then stopping that a little bit, maybe to 2.8 and f4 with some late afternoon light of some peeling paint and moss on the side of a stone. The way it transitioned from incredibly sharp with even like micro contrast detail that just blew me away. It just instantly fades away to this mistiness that is just magical. And I noticed a lot of people who go over the pictures stopped on these and they go, wow, it makes you stop. Brilliant contrast. I used it for a couple of side and backlit portraits and it held up beautifully. The color, the saturation, and again, there's like a micro contrast element to this lens that just makes it sparkle. It really, really does. It reminds me of certain German manufacturers' lenses. That's what I'll say about this particular one. Nice. And it's small and compact and it's a great carry-around lens.
I feel that's going to be like a really good lens for people who are doing weddings. Because you have your macro to get those the detailed shots and rings and such like that, and then you could use it for a portrait. So it's a nice two birds with one stone situation right there.
Yep, and it's got an f2 is a good speed.
And what about these two Canon RF telephoto fixed aperture lenses? There's a 600 millimeter and an 800 millimeter, and to me this is really interesting. We'll also talk later about a Tokina, but why are they putting out these lenses now?
These are interesting because, number one, the focal lengths are insane. All right. Now, it sounds like f11, you're going to be in trouble. Now, these are image stabilized. If you combine, you get image stabilization in the lens and between the body. And again, I believe it's about 7.5 stops of image stabilization between the two. I owned and used a 500 millimeter f5 for many years, and that was a challenge to use. These lenses, which both were longer, were easier to use, and they were a lot slower. And I think there are several reasons for that. Number one, you have image stabilization built into it. The way it might be f11, but then you have the dual autofocus system of the Canon, which really, and the viewing system. It was not a dark image. When you shoot with an SLR or a DSLR with a long lens that's say 5.6 or f8, your finder is dim. But when you put it on these, your finder makes it brighter. And now we have also eye focus and face recognition. It was amazing how easy it was to focus these lenses and hand hold them and keep them sharp. A snow egret was feeding on the opposite side of the lake where we were shooting. And I was able to lock on to the face of this thing with both the 6 and 800 millimeter lens and get sharp pictures. Once it took off, forget about it. I couldn't track it. I'd have to work with this thing for a while. But another big thing about these lenses is that they are extremely light. The 600 millimeter lens weighs 2 pounds. The 800 millimeter lens is 2.77 pounds. Now, another cool thing about it is that they're collapsible. When you take it off, you could fold it down. That basically the barrel folds in on itself, and the lenses are not much longer than a 70 to 200. So you're not carrying around this giant case or an extra bag. These lenses, both of them, will fit into a medium to large size camera bag depending on how you carry your gear around. So you have lightweight lenses that have ridiculous focal lengths that are light and hand holdable. I did not use a tripod at all. I rested it on a rail at one point, and I felt extremely comfortable shooting with these lenses.
And they're 10% of the price of,
Yes, they're very affordable. They are, yes.
But yeah, you sold me on those, Alan. That's for sure. I've been actually trying to get these guys to send me, these reflex lenses to do some articles here at B&H, but no luck. Maybe this will change things. Let's jump onto Fujifilm real quick, and I'm going to just mention that the X-T4 was announced in February, so a lot happened since February. So we haven't talked about stuff, but want to mention it. Also want to mention that there's a new GF 30 millimeter f3.5 RWR lens for the medium format system.
That's a 24 millimeter equivalent. So that's a nice wide angle.
Right. And Kevin reminded us of another Fujifilm camera that came out. Maybe you want to mention that, Kevin?
Yeah, the X100V, the fifth iteration of the X100 series. Really good. They improved the 23 millimeter lens on there. So February was a busy month for Fuji because it came out with that. They came out with the X-T4 it was the same month, and then all of a sudden, the world changed. And then they also, I think the XT200 also came out, the entry level camera. So it's with an expensive lens, the 35 f2. But it was just it's a big month for Fuji. Everybody's waiting for the new X100V and the X-T4. All of a sudden that happened, and then we went into a little bit of a daze when it comes down to it, and people forgot about it. I forgot about the X100V because I'm looking at it and I was like, did it come out this year?
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, wait, it did, because that has been on my wish list for a while. I haven't gotten it yet. But really good travel camera. I mean, I've used the F before, and this just makes it a little bit I don't want to invest in two different lens systems, and I love Fujifilm's colors, and I feel that using something like the X100V, a fixed lens, 35 millimeter equivalent, it's weather sealed once you put the adapter ring and the filter on there, and you can just go out and travel if you want something more lightweight. Right. But the X-T4
cameras for street photography, especially, and the V, are there any noticeable improvements or giant improvements over the F?
It's going to be more resolution. It's 26 megapixels. They did redesign the lens, so it's sharper in the corners and such like that. Those are the two major things, but for the most part, they didn't do any weird body designs like they did on the X Pro 3. So this was simple, straight to the point. It's going to be that all-around travel camera. You have those wonderful film simulations inside of it that you could, emulate Astia, Acros, whatever you want to do. Plus, there is a big community in the Fuji industry. What I'm discovering this now, big community as far as you could just go and get these recipes, as they call them, and get different looks for different other film stocks to get something approximations, and it's just fun. I'm messing around with it now on the XT3, and it's making me want the X100V, but I'm like, I should wait a little bit just in case, but we'll have to be responsible.
Yes, of course.
Oh, come on. By the way, you mentioned something that you touched on something that's worth reiterating, is that one of the, I think the cool things about Fuji is that there's a really nice community amongst the users. Yeah. And they're a very committed bunch. Anyone who uses a Fuji camera is committed to it. And the photography is wonderful. There's some great images. Fuji has a certain look about it that I could tell a Fuji picture a mile away. And they do it well. They do what they do very, very well.
It's really good because there's a lot of people who do they shoot RAW, spend times on the RAW file, editing it their own way. But sometimes I do travel photography, and sometimes you just don't want to have that whole, I just took 1,000 pictures in Hong Kong. Now I have to go go through them, cull them, and stuff like that. And I think with the flexibility that you have with the Fuji system, in which you could just, put on film simulation and shoot JPEG and RAW if you want to go back to it and just get something nice out of the camera and not worry about, you could just, a lot of people, post online or send to their friends, and that's what it is now. But it's a really, really nice system. The colors, like you said before, are just, they stand out, and you could tell a Fuji shot from other ones. it's really it's different. It's fun. It reminds me of using like a film camera, and that's what makes it's a little bit analog digital when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure.
So let's jump over to Leica then, and Leica announced the M10R, which I think got a lot of Leica shooters pretty excited. Any comments?
Yeah, 40 megapixel. I think a lot of people had a comment. The M10 was an amazing camera. The monochrome, M10 monochrome, is essentially the black and white version of that. I've had a lot of hands-on with that one, and it's an amazing camera to use. And I always thought that they had to get away from 24 megapixel, even though I just at the beginning of the show said all you need is 2024. But I found that for Leica, being the company that it is and the kind of prices that they charge, first of all, they're 24 megapixel cameras, the M10. The photographs are astounding at it. The color's gorgeous. If you've used it, you know that it really does take different pictures. It's not just, invasion of the body snatches going on here. There really is a difference. When they go to 40 megapixel, now you're psychologically competing with Sony and Nikon and Canon, saying that, yeah, we too have that high megapixel thing. Not that it's the biggest thing in the world, but I think it sort of brings them up to a certain niche in that way. And again, it may not make a darn bit of difference at all. I'm not sure. But to get back to it, I know that the image quality from the camera is supposed to be amazing. I've spoken to people who have shot with it, and they go, yeah, there's a big difference. It takes great photographs. The camera handles beautifully. And if anyone's ever considering a Leica, again, a Leica is a rangefinder camera. It's a different kind of machine to use. And when I started using M's a lot, I had that same thing. And I had a problem with Leica, and that's that they don't photograph. They don't focus real close. You can't get closer than 2 feet with most lenses, and even 3 with some of them. And that's not the way I work. I get on top of everything I'm shooting. And then I discovered that you can actually put a reflex finder on that thing, the VisaFlex 020, and it turns it into a mirrorless camera. And then you can now adapt any lens that you want to. And I had macro lenses and all kinds of wide angles. And all of a sudden, I'm using a rangefinder camera with a design that's over 60 years old, but I'm shooting, an inch or two away from my subject, using lenses and everything else that I liked using with my mirrorless system, but now I'm shooting it with a Leica platform. And it's a different camera. You approach photographs differently with this. I could spend the next 2 hours talking about this, and I won't. But yeah, the M10R is out. It's 40 megapixel, a few other little tweaks over the M10. And if you've never tried one before you leave this planet, try to get a test drive on one, and then just judge for yourself.
He said it perfectly, but it's basically very similar to the tweaks that you see in the M10P, which is the stealth Leica, basically, as they would call it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the dot. But the touchscreen, the quiet shutter and body, and they improved with this shutter. Well, not the shutter. What they improved with this sensor is better low light and dynamic range. But usually, I in my experience with people who have Leicas, it's about the feel. It's a certain experience that comes down to Leicas, and I feel that they're different. A different breed when it comes down to it. Just like people who have high-end sports cars and such like that.
So let's jump over to the Nikon.
Yeah, the Z5. The Z5 is their entry-level full-frame Z-mount camera. So it's going to be a little bit, the numbers, well, in this case, Nikon puts the lower number. Actually, no. Nikon puts the lower numbers for the entry-level, like 3,000, 5,000 series. Right. But yeah, that's the entry-level full-frame crop. So it's a good entry point for people who may have Nikon cameras already, and they're like, I think about going mirrorless. Yeah. So in the past, you would have that situation. Before the Z series came out, it was always like, all right, I have a Nikon, I want to go mirrorless. You only had internally you didn't have an option because the V was a step down from a DSLR. And now, since Nikon is firmly situated or getting to the point of putting out mirrorless cameras, because they came out with the Z50, which is the APS-C version of it. Mm-hmm. So the Z5 is a good story. I want full frame. I want to stick with Nikon because I like the Nikon feel, I like the Nikon menus. And now they have an entry-level option that's 24 megapixels with IBIS. It's weather sealed, has very good autofocus. Does your video too with just 4K UHD up to 30 frames, but it is going to be a good entry point for a lot of people. Like I have a friend who's looking to do the same thing, go from a Nikon D750 and wants something small to go hiking with. I'm like, you got to look at the Z5. And I'm like, you have to look at it because you have these lenses. It doesn't make sense for you to go to a different system, adapt it, and you're not going to get the same autofocus results. The good thing about Nikon having a system like this is now they have their own adapter they can use with their own lenses that you can use on their own camera. And that's just going to make it more streamlined when it comes down to it. You get the same experience, mirrorless or DSLR. And I think Nikon having an entry-level option with the Z5 is to just bring more people into their system. And we'll see how it fleshes out down the road because they do have a loyal fan base, and they have it's very solid. And I think the lenses speak for themselves as well. It's just...
Kevin, let me ask you a question, if I may. Based on my own personal feelings of it, go back about a year or so, a year and a half, and if you would talk to me about Canon and Nikon mirrorless cameras, I would sort of be looking at them with a half-cocked eye because it was like they were still freshly cracked out of the shell and trying to find their way. I don't find that anymore. I find that when we start talking about mirrorless cameras from Canon and Nikon in particular, they're getting there. They broke their teeth. They learned their lessons. They did what they had to, especially with Canon with their R5 and R6. They stepped up the plate and they did it. It's no longer a question, are they as good as the other guys or guy, whatever you want to call it. And I think Nikon's the same kind of place right now. Now they're credible. They did what they had to do. They learned a few things, and now they're coming out with products that make sense and fit into what people are looking for right now. You agree on that one?
I definitely do agree. It's I don't find them as far ahead as, let's say, Canon is, because Canon has put out, they started with the R, then they had the RP, then they came up with the R5 and R6, and they just had pushed it out. But Canon has a whole other mirrorless system, the EFM mounts, so that's a little bit tricky. Nikon did a little bit better when they did their line. They're like, we'll cut our teeth on this, learn from it. And then they did the Z50, which was an APS-C version, to kind of supplement everything to get people into the system as well. Because when I talk to people, when I talk to customers or my staff, I always tell them to look at migration. If someone, like this, for example, if someone starts with a Canon like Rebel, right? So their EFS mount, then they go into the full frame, then you have to worry about the lenses. Like, oh, my EFS lenses won't work on the full frame. Then it's to kind of get them future focused. Like if someone steps up, you want to have that door open just in case. So with Canon, if someone has a mirrorless camera, like EFM, they can't easily migrate up to R because there's no adapter for that. There's no compatibility there. So they have to stay within that M system and then either or go their separate ways for the most part. Nikon was smart. They did the Z50 to get people to go into the Z system. They can work on the DX format there. And then if they want to step up, Z5, Z6, Z7, and we'll see if they flesh anything else out down the road. I hope they do, because I think they may get a little bit, the way that the Z5 is, because it has 2 card slots and their higher end cameras do not, I think I would hope that they would, because it doesn't flesh out when you look at the side to side, like, oh, that has 2 slots. That one has 1, and it's the XQD, which is more expensive. So,
what are you thinking that the next Nikon will be their flagship, right? Their flagship D that will go ahead of the 7.
Yeah, they need something to go against this current generation, the R5 and R6, and they need something to go against the Sonys and such like that. Because with 3 Z bodies currently, 4 currently, because you have the APS-C ones. They need to flesh out, because I feel that the Z6 and Z7, even though they were great, it felt like a Nikon camera, which is interesting. When you go to a mirrorless camera, sometimes you think, this doesn't feel like what I was used to. Those nailed the ergonomics. It's just whether if they have something to compete against this generation, because they're going to need that if they want to basically stay relevant with everything in the mirrorless realm, because their DSLRs are, everybody runs to the DSLRs. The 850 is great, the 780 is great. So I think the Zs, Z6 and Z7s are like a beta test. Find out what people complain about, then improve on it the next generation. And I think we're about to.
Nikon put out a lens recently for the Z system, which is the Z 24 to 50 millimeter f4 to 6.3. Don't know if there's a lot to say about that.
Well, what's interesting about it, it's a hair under 3 inches long. It's slow. And I think they meant this to be as what we used to put a small 50 millimeter 1.8 lens on our cameras. This is essentially a new kind of normal lens as far as size, because even kit lenses tend to be kind of big. This is tiny, and it's not fast. But again, if you could pump up your ISO very easily these days, and you got image stabilization. So for just run around, kick around, day tripping, this is a nice little alternative. And 24 to 50 is nice. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. You got good street scene, then you got 15 millimeter for normal.
Yeah,
there you go. All right, let's jump over to Olympus really quick. They put out in February, or they announced in February, the OMD EM1 Mark III, and then just last week announced the OMD EM10 Mark IV, which is, I guess, your entry level of the EM series. There's also the EM5, and that seems to be a pretty interesting camera. I always like these cameras.
One of the things I always liked about Olympus, they stuff a lot of things into that package. Some extremely innovative things. They were one of the first people to have the pixel shift technology to build, larger files, and a lot of other little imaging tricks that kind of really do help you tweak the picture and get a really optimized final image file to work with. And Olympus has always been real good about that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very, 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 like you said, they stuff a lot in there that you wouldn't think of. Like he's like, oh, all right, let's put in. I think they were one of the first ones to put IBIS sensor shift.
Yeah.
It was them. And then you have things like the live ND, the handheld high res mode, kind of like the pixel shift mode.
Mm-hmm.
The bodies, and they're very snappy too. I like the Micro Four Thirds system, especially the Olympus's, just because we get customers and they call up and say like, listen, I'm going hiking, I'm going birding, but I can't carry this Nikon camera anymore. I can't carry this giant DSLR anymore. And I would always say, if you're doing that, Olympus Micro Four Thirds system is really good because you have something, because they did come out with a new lens as well, the 100 to 400, that basically on a Micro Four Thirds, that's 200 to 800, and it's tiny. It's going to be tinier than a real 800 millimeter lens, and you could get your shots that way. And the EM1 Mark III is a very quick, very, very quick camera because it is their flagship. So, and I think it's 7 stops of stabilization according to the CIPA rating on that, which is ridiculous. So it's a lot of the features are borrowed from their bigger camera, the EM1X, but it's the Mark III is very, very well-rounded when it comes to the feature set. It's may get overlooked because everybody's like coming out with their big splashy announcements, but this is really capable. 60 frames per second with raw and JPEG capture.
Wow.
It's really good.
I always felt that I think the biggest problem that Micro Four Thirds had was that when it first came out, these cameras were indeed smaller than the competition and smaller than APS-C and smaller than full frame for sure. That's not the case anymore because with time, everybody else has managed to shrink their cameras down, and now you can get a full frame camera. Sometimes that's smaller than a Micro Four Thirds. So they lost that argument. And that, I think, would make a lot of people sort of like look away at that point, saying, why should I bother with something so quote unquote small, as far as sensor size, when I can get a full frame the same size, but they're overlooking all of the features that you're getting within this camera at a very, very, very fair price. Yeah. So you got to sort of step back sometimes and take a more of a global look at systems when you're choosing. So that's just my 2 cents on that one.
Cool. Yeah, it's usually what I tell people is like, these cameras are all tools. Put the right tool in your hand, because one may do something. You have to ask yourself, am I going to use everything on that?
Yep.
Or is this going to work better for me because this is mostly what I need? And then you look, like I said, you look at the whole picture and then you're like, all right, I'll go with this one, because all cameras these days take great pictures. It's just what
it's the truth. You have to effort to take a bad picture now. You do.
especially with these cameras that are coming out. Like I know Olympus has it on like the EM1X, like the scene recognition, like, oh, that's a train. Let me put in this mode, or that's a bird. We're getting to a point in which
we don't even need photographers.
Almost hoping not that point. But the whole idea is just like, we've seen a shift, like maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was like a megapixel race, like who could come out with 50 megapixels, and everybody does it now, and it gives you different options. Then we're reaching this point of like, hey, who's going to be with 4K? Who's going to beat us to that? And everybody's competing like, oh, we do 5.9K. Oh, we do 8K. So now you're getting this resolution and frame rate thing for video. I think the next step for all this, if you look at it, is going to be the whole AI machine learning that these cameras are starting to get. That they can recognize a scene. We always see with IAF, like, okay, track you, turn around, and it's still on your eye. I think that's the next frontier that these camera brands are going to start to chase, is just like, all right, how smart can we make the camera be?
Okay, we're going to take a short break for traffic and weather, and we come back. We're going to be jumping all over the new Sony a7S III. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
All right, we are back. Let's talk about Panasonic. Again, we are going alphabetically here. And it's the Panasonic Lumix DC-G100, which comes with a 12 to 32 millimeter lens. And that's also a 20 megapixel, 20.3 live MOS sensor. It'll shoot 4K 30p. And 5-axis hybrid image stabilization, subject tracking, all of the tricks that all the cameras are now doing in a nice little package on there. Yeah, anything you want to add on to that, Kev?
It's basically their answer for content creators these days. It's very vlogging centric with the articulating screen. The microphone was just developed by Nokia, so it's a little bit of a more advanced than typical microphones.
That's the Ozo audio, is it?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different for it. So it's basically going for an inexpensive segment when it comes down to, I just want a camera for vlogging, for dealing with my videos, because it does 1-to-1 ratio for Instagram, even though you don't really need it for Instagram these days, but it does your vlog, has a good video on there. It's not going to be in the same realm as those high-end Panasonic cameras, GH5, those type of cameras, but this is a good entry level for someone who wants to develop their own vlog or such, or use it as a webcam as well, which I believe they did come out with a program for that you'll be able to hook it up, because it does have clean HDMI out. So if someone wants to use it as a webcam, it is very possible with the camera. But basically, it's just very vlogging centric.
Can we compare this camera to the Olympus, the EM10 Mark IV that just came out, or even something we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is the Sony ZV-1, which both seem to be kind of aimed at the vlogging crowd to some degree?
Yeah, I think that when you compare it, I think since Panasonic has that lineage and the reputation for putting good video features in there, because it does have vlog, so if anybody wants to record vlog, and it does it's more suited in the video realm. I feel like the Olympus is a little bit more, still has its foot decently firm in the whole photo realm of things, like selfies and such like that. But I feel like Panasonic does a little bit of a more solid job in the video aspect because they have that pedigree. But when we get to it, the ZV-1 is an interesting comparison with these two cameras, which is
cool.
Good.
Cool. Okay, and then let's jump over to Pentax real quick. And they put out a lens back in May. It's the HD Pentax DFA 85 millimeter f1.4, which to me is a great lens for the K system, for the K-mount cameras, which I love. Anything to say about those guys?
It's a Star. It was one of the Star Series primes, which is the Star Series are like, people don't realize it with the little star there. The little asterisk is the little like their high-end line, but it's a good all-weather it's weather resistant with supersonic AF. It's a very solid prime for people in the K system, which is still I have a K1000, so it's the Pentax has that nice look to it when it comes down to it. SMC glass and Takumar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but yeah, it's good that Pentax is still updating their lines and stuff like that, which is good because they do have a dedicated crowd. So with the K1 Mark II and such like that, they're out there, and it's very good that they're still supporting. And they did say that they're going to be supporting the DSLR format in the future. So they're not running to mirrorless like other brands. So, which is an interesting decision in 2020.
Okay, yeah, from Sam Yang and Rokinon, one and the same, kissing cousins. They also have an 85-1.4 autofocus lens. And interesting, these are they used to be that they were very cheap manual focus alternatives that were very, very sharp, not perfect, but very, very, very sharp, if anything. And now they're switching to autofocus. They're getting the lenses a little bit beefier. They also have a 14 millimeter f2.8. They're Mark II, which is a real nice ultra wide, super wide. That's fast.
People may ask what the difference with the Mark II and the original versions is. Like, it's the same optical design on those lenses. It's just added weather sealing. They have a better grip on the focus ring, and now I can declick the aperture instead of taking it apart and messing with it that way. And also on the 14 millimeter lens, they actually put a focus lock on there. So if anyone was doing astrophotography and didn't want their lens to lose focus, you could lock your focus down, which is really good. And that AF85 is available for RF mount, which is good because now we're seeing the Canon RF system get third-party lenses now, and it's slowly getting a larger library of lenses for that system, in both from Canon and other brands as well.
So that's Sam Yang, and now we have Sigma, and they have a 56 millimeter 1.4 DC DN-C. That's part of their global vision lenses. This is a first class normal lens. And again, I do not have any hands on with this, but I know that I've used prior Sigmas in this range, and they're just great lenses. Again, one company that used to be looked upon as, well, if you can't afford, the Cadillac, you buy the Chevy. No. They're good. Now they're equal in quality. You don't have to hide in shame if you use them.
And there's the Sigma, the 100-400. Sorry to jump ahead there, but we had Mark Farb from Sigma on a couple weeks ago, and he was touting this lens big time. He really liked it a lot.
Yeah. And again, nice range. It's just a great range that they have.
It's really nice. It's like looking at it, like you said before, like with the third-party brands, people were like, oh, you're going to do that. Now, I think Sigma was one of the first ones that got people confident in buying
for sure
third-party, because they came out with them like, oh, the art here is a Global Visions line. Okay. And they just producing. And once the reviews came out, everybody felt comfortable. People bought them and then went nuts with them. And then it kind of woke up the other brands to be like, all right, we have to get our quality that good now. And now, like for me, I shoot Sony. So I remember when the word, everybody was coming to the store like, oh, there's not a lot of lenses for the Sony. Now it goes to the part of like, there's a lot of lenses for the Sony now. And then you're going to see that roll up into like the other mirrorless systems, because that was like the knock. It's like, oh, there's not a lot of lenses. What do I have to adapt this lens to there? Now it's just like you have so many options and so many different price points. Like the 100-400 from Sigma, I may get that because it's just in a good price point, and I don't want to, I want the Chevy this time, I guess you could say, because you could use it. And we mentioned before, that's a good, like for landscapes and such like that, to just give it a different look. And it's also, if you notice, it doesn't have a tripod ring on there. So that kind of tells you the weight of it compared to the other options that are out for that system.
Very good point. Good point. And by the way, like the Canon 1-500 millimeter, this lens also focuses in real close. It goes down to 1/4 life size, which again is pretty good. And lenses like this never used to do that. And as you said, Doesn't even have a focusing, a tripod collar, which means that, yeah, you can handhold it, and you can.
Yeah. And then the other thing that came out from Sigma that kind of popped up was last week. They came out with the 85 1.4 DGDN, which is there for the Sony E mount and the L mount, which kind of has everybody up in arms now because it's basically a $1,200 inexpensive high quality portrait option for the Sony shooters and for those who have the L mount alliance. So that's your Sigma, your Panasonic, and Leica. So that has everybody like, oh wow, we have another 85 now, and it's a price. And reviews on this I've been seeing online, people love it. So especially for that price too. It's
yeah. Now Sigma also came out for APS-C format. They have the 16 millimeter 1.4 DCDN, which is a 24 millimeter equivalent. So now at f1.4, that's a powerful combination right there.
Was it E mount, EFM mount, L mount, and micro four thirds? Yep. So I think at least now we could see how Sigma is going to produce, because they're in the L mount alliance. So L mount users will be really happy to what comes out from Sigma in the future and now. But it's padding up that line, so you have a nice lens library to choose from for those 3 different brands now. So, but yeah, Sigma, very, very good. I want to see how that 85 turns out, even though I do have the GM 85, but for those people who call up, should I get the what 85 should I get? You have a lot of options now for let's say Sony email. So it's remarkable. Now we have too many options, but there's never too many options unless you get option paralysis. Is never a bad thing. You could just look and see which tool works for you for the price point that you have.
We're talking Sony here briefly, so let's jump into it with the A7S Mark III. That was also one of the biggest announcements of the past several weeks, along with the Canon and to some degree the Nikon. So everyone here except me is a Sony shooter, and I have an A6500. But what do you guys have to say about this?
About time.
I give you 30 seconds.
This is like one of those things that's just like people have been waiting for a long time. Everybody's like, am I going to wait for the A7S III? I need when's that coming out? When's it coming out? And it's just like, we don't know yet. But especially since it was on the tails of the R5 and R6, people were just wondering what Sony was going to do. And they played it safe, which is a good thing, because just because you're the first, just because someone else beat you something doesn't mean coming in second place is a bad thing. We see that with other brands in the tech industry, Apple for one. But for the most part, it does 4K really well. And I had my hands on it for a bit. It's just, everything on this is basically new. And new menu, new screen, new body type because it has an articulating screen. It's new formats for the video, new memory card type, new sensor. It's 12 megapixels still, but it's a BSI. It's just, they stepped up to the plate and did a really good job on it. Alan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm impressed with the fact that some people wondering if it was going to be a real major change. They have just taken it and just taken it to the next stop. Rather than mess around with something that really worked. I had the original A7S when it came out, and I absolutely loved the camera, but 12 megapixel just didn't make it for a lot of things I was doing. So I went to the next step up from there, and I think I'm in my 3rd or 4th Sony since then. But I've always been amazed of the low light imaging abilities of the original camera. I have not used the new one, but from everything I understand, it's just astounding. And again, what's amazing about Sony, and I'll give it credit to the other ones too, but Sony in particular, they really found a niche for each of their cameras, depending on what your needs are. You have an equal quality camera for different purposes. Sort of like it's the A7 multi-tool. What do you want to do? And we have a version for it. So here you have 12 megapixel. They didn't change that. They're keeping it. They need large photons, large pixels to gather all that light. It's not about resolving power. It's about light, and it's about gathering tone. And that's what this does. And I remember when the original camera came out, I went to show it to a friend of mine, and I said, you got to check this out. and he had this large storage closet. And I said, let's go in there. And we closed the door, and there was zero light. And I said, hold still. And I just put it into program, and I pressed the shutter. And son of a gun, I had a sharp picture of him, and there was no light in there. It's magic. And that was the original one. So now we're 3 generations down. We've gone 2 more generations. And I imagine that this camera is just that much better right now. I know they tweaked a lot of subtle things in it as far as video and everything else. It's just, it's the perfect machine for what it does.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people are like, oh, it's still 12. And like you mentioned before, it has to have those big photo sites to get it in.
That's right.
To light it. And then also they're tweaking the sensors that it's backside illuminated now. So that gets even more light in there. It's like, I had time to play around with it for a weekend, and you pick it up, you're like, all right, this feels like a Sony. If someone's familiar with the A7R4, it's almost the same body type. There are little tweaks that they did with it that are like the flip out screen. They probably fixed one of my little pet peeves about the Sony system in the past is the placement of the eye sensor for the viewfinder. Typically, it's at the top of the viewfinder. So since it's underneath the lip of the eye cup, dust gets in there, and then it starts to on, off all the time. And just like, no, I have to clean that up again. So now they moved it to the bottom. So little subtle change, but something that I noticed. One thing important to note is that it does take a new memory card type, which is CF Express Type A. This is different.
That's right.
Yeah. This is different from the Type B, which is the same form factor of XQD. This is a smaller version of the CF Express line, which will have 3 types eventually, so A, B, and C. Nothing I know takes C yet. C is going to be for like big cameras, so don't worry about that. But A is almost just a tad smaller than a SD card. So the benefit of this is, since it's a PCI Express bus, it's going to be very quick for that video. But the way that Sony did this was that they have dual slots that take both types of cards, which is really interesting. So if you want to do 2 CF Express cards, you could do that. If you want to do a CF Express in an SD card, you could do that. If you want 2 SD cards in there, you could do that. The menu system, which was a big gripe for people for a long time, I didn't have any problems with it because I started with Sony years ago, so I was very familiar with it. But I could see how people from other brands would migrate over and complain about it. So they redesigned it. It is touch capable now. And the way that it works is like, instead of being like tabs, you have it like on the top, they're on the side now. And you can just touch through it depending on what you want to do. Also, if you're in video mode, you get the video options in the menu. And when you go to photo, you get the photo options in the menu. You kind of have some crossover with some settings because they don't want to lock you out. But to get more control over your video, you'll be set in the video mode naturally, and then it will have those settings for you. So that's really good. The fact that they actually put the articulating screen now finally, after a lot of Sony users were clamoring for them to, hey, put a real articulating flip screen on there instead of a tilting one, now opens up the door for a lot of people, content creators who want something to vlog with per se. I mean, they find basically this is the camera that Sony actually listened and started to make the camera how they want to, because you have like the new formats, and they have 422 10-bit and such like that, which is like all the video specs you can go nuts about. But and also the 16-bit RAW. But what I want to say is that we all know that those 2 words that people are, have been talking about for the past month or so, or maybe a few weeks now, is the overheating word. I tested the camera out, and this is non-scientific at all, but as a scientific as I'm going to get. Put the camera up on a tripod, put it by the window, press record, hope your memory card has enough space, and let it go. Just check on it every 15 minutes. So I got 1 hour nonstop, 4K 60 on the camera without any issues. So the overheating did start blinking at that point, but this is one of those hot, humid New York City days that it was like sweltering in my room, but 1 hour.
I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah.
On that same subject, I just want to throw in. There's been some talk about the overheating with the Canon R5 as well. And a few people asked me about that. And when we did the video on that, it was a brutal day. It was horrendous. It was, again, mid 90s, humidity was terrible, and a bright sun. And we were out in Van Cortlandt Park from 9 till I left at 5. They were still there, and we didn't have any failures going on. We had 4 cameras going, and they were all going almost all the time because we kept trading off and shooting different things because we had a lot to cover in one day. And we did not have any overheating problems under really horrendous working conditions. Not to say that it's not a problem, but we did not experience that at all. So again, hands-on, that's what we saw.
Yeah, because that's been like the talk of the town for the past 2-3 weeks. It's just like, oh, this is overheating. That's overheating. It's where you use them, how you're using them, I think, and how much you need to record for. I know that results may vary depending on where you are and what settings you have. And yeah, I did 4K. I did put the 4K 60 at 200 megabits a second just to put it through its paces basically. And the longest I got without the battery dying or the memory card getting full was 1 hour. And then the first time that I tried it, I got 47 minutes straight up. So they did improve a lot. They did work on what they needed to work on. It's a remarkable camera, and it's, like I said, it's Sony listened to their fans, basically, when coming down to it.
Sony also put out a 12 to 24 millimeter f2.8 lens, a GM lens. And if there's anything you want to add about that, go for it. However, I'm going to jump ahead to the Sony ZV-1, which was announced in May. I guess that it's fair to say it's similar to the RX100. But it's for the vloggers, right? With a microphone and a flip-out screen.
That's when you knew that Sony was working on something with the A7S III, because it was like, all right, this has a flip screen. I hope the next one has a flip screen. Mm-hmm. And once I saw that, I felt better on where Sony was going with everything. But the ZV-1 is basically a new line that borrows a lot from the RX100 series. It has a 1-inch, 20 megapixel stacked CMOS sensor. The lens is a 24-70, 1.8 to 2.8. It's perfect for the people who are want something like travel vloggers, per se, is a good example for that. You have better ergonomics than the RX100 series because it's a bit more of a grip. Has an IAF, some special modes on there like product photography mode, like product video mode that it actually defocuses with like it should. And the video is like, and it's oversampled too, so you have good video quality with the Sony formats that it uses, like XAVCS. But it's very solid, and that kind of led to the G100. And you see a lot of these cameras, a lot of camera companies are saying, we have content creators out there, and we have to go after that because no one's just a photographer anymore. No one's just a videographer anymore. You have people who do both now, and now that's basically targeting that people, and that's a good solid one. And like one of my roommate was basically like, that has to be my travel camera because the RX100 series is great. And now they just made it a little bit more video friendly when it comes down to it. So we'll see how this matures over time because I could see some things that I would like them to do, but I don't have a big enough of a soapbox for them to hear me. But
you never know. Now that you're on the podcast and all.
Sony, make it a little bit wider for the people who, do selfies, because I'm not going to do that, but that's one of the things. 24 may be a little bit too tight for some people. Just saying.
Yeah, good point. Huh. All right. Alan, anything to add on that? Or
No. That's about as well covered as I could do. Yeah, you got it on that one.
Well
did you play with the 12 to 24 by any chance?
No, I have not. No.
I ran into it because when I had the A7S III, when I did the Q&A session for B&H on that one, it's remarkably smaller than I thought it was going to be, because usually you used to like a 12 to 24 being just like a massive lens.
Yeah, a backbreaker.
Yeah, this one is a little bit, it's bigger than the 12 to 24 f4, but for what it's worth, it's going to be that perfect like travel landscape lens for people who want those really vast wide angle like shots. Go to Iceland and use that. And
Kevin, what about comparing that to the 16 to 35 millimeter that people like out in Sony?
Well, that one, this is going to be much wider, and also like the sharpness levels on this is extremely, extremely good. So I think, in my opinion, since I feel like they're both extremely sharp, you got to choose, like we said it like 100 times already, but like choosing the right tool, because sometimes 12 millimeters may be a bit too wide for some people, and 16 and 35 may be better. I feel that the Sony options that they've been putting out with their lenses has been hitting the sharpness marks. And the part of it is just like, from experience, I went out, I was in Japan, there was a shot I wanted, and I was like, oh, I'm going to bring the 12 to 24, the f4 version. I went too wide, and I was on the train going to where I was going to take the shoot, and I was like, I should have brought the other one, because I needed 28 millimeter to get the shot, and I was like at 24. I'm like, I don't have any coverage, because I went 12 to 24, and it had a 70 to 200, so that middle coverage I didn't have, and I was just like, I blew it. I have to wait to go back. But
now you know why you need a 50 megapixel camera, so you can crop in.
It was just like next time. It's like choosing the right tool. But the 12 to 24, it was really surprising. I just feel that, it may be a little bit out of price range for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it will be. So, which is good. It's just
if
another option.
Interior work, it could be the kind of lens that makes or breaks it. If you do architecture, especially if you do a lot of urban architecture, there's a limit to how far you can back up sometimes. Yep. And lenses like this enable you to capture environments that you just can't get otherwise without getting into stitching or other kind of advanced imaging techniques. And you also mentioned something that's really important, is that 12 to 24 is a very wide range, and it should be used responsibly. And even though everything looks amazing, that's another thing about ultra wide. As soon as you look through the finder, it looks amazing, okay? And then you get the pictures back, and it's like there's no center of focus. Your eye doesn't know where to go because it sees everything. You have to be able to know how to compose very carefully when you use an extreme wide angle lens. Otherwise, it's just a mess. The eye doesn't know where to go.
Exactly. So, leading lines is key when it comes down to that.
Let's jump to the last two items we have on the list, at least the two items on my list. The Tamron 28 to 200 millimeter f2.8 f5.6, which is a Sony FE mount lens. And I'll throw into that the Tokina SZX Super Tele 400 millimeter f8 reflex lens.
Yeah, I'm interested in that guy.
Yeah, I like those two.
Yeah.
It's a that conversation about the Canon lenses. Any thoughts on either of those?
Yeah, the Tamron 28 to 200, it's supposed to be a really, really compact little lens. It's the kind of thing you can carry around all day long and use it. And this lens also gives you a really good maximum magnification of 1 to 3. So it's got a good magnifying, a good close focusing abilities. And again, light, small, and it's a 42 to 300 if you're using it on an APS-C camera. It will cover full frame.
Yeah, and what I like about it too, if you notice, it starts at 2.8 on 28, and then it goes up to 5.6. And what I realized when I was doing the research on this, it's a little bit brighter in the mid-range compared to the Sony 24 to 240. So at like 70, you're going to definitely get more light in there, which is really good for people who are... Tamron, basically, they did... If you notice their lenses, they kind of have unconventional endings, like focal ranges when it comes down to it, like the 28 to 75, then you have the 70 to 180. So 28 to 200 is going to give you another option for people who want an all-in-one zoom. And like you said, it's going to be smaller. It's not going to be as big as other, or it's going to be less in your bag, basically, if you deal with those max apertures. But it's another good option for us Sony shooters out there, because you just think about what do I need, and also the ones who start to get into a system. Usually they start with like the kit lens, and they get maybe like a nifty 50 type lens, and then they always have that point in which like, I just want one lens that does it all because I don't need anything else really. And then now Tamron has an option for that, so which is really good.
But we should mention this is a Sony FE mount. This particular lens, yes,
full frame. It's not available for anything else at this point, but it's adds right to the catalog of really good Tamron lenses for the Sony full frame.
And also, we talk about it as an all-around, lens that you could just use for everything. It's also moisture-resistant construction. It's got fluorine coatings to keep schmutz off the front element. So it's really made very, very well as well. That's also an important thing. And it also has a zoom lock switch to keep everything where it should be, no drifting and stuff. So it's well thought out, and it's meant to take serious pictures.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's a 67 millimeter filter thread, right? Because if it is,
check that right now.
Yeah, because that's just Tamron being very focused on what they're trying to do, because all the other lenses are 67s. It's like the 20, 24, 35.
And it is a 67 millimeter. You are correct on that. Yes.
Yeah. So Tamron's really consistent on what they're putting out, and they have an idea on, all right, we're going to do this and make it very, like they have basically have a trinity of lenses. They have the 70 to 28, 28 to 75, 70 to 180. You have this one now. You have 3' lenses. That's a very good starting point for a lot of people who want to go, who are looking to get into the Sony full frame system and don't want to spend a fortune on lenses. It's very, very good. And they have great reviews too, which is nice.
Yeah.
Like, we mentioned it before about like Sigma starting everything with like making the third-party lenses like better, and Tamron has definitely stepped up the game, especially since they're concentrating on mirrorless too.
Yes,
and then and now I guess.
Speaking of good pricing, the Tokina.
Exactly. Yeah, another company that's also gone through its Rip Van Winkle stage and woken up and is doing great stuff. I don't mean to be cruel, but this new lens is a Tokina. It's the SZX Super Tele 400 millimeter f8 reflex manual focus. It is a catio. Let me see if I can say this. Catadioptric. No. It's a cat lens. It's a mirror lens. I could never say that word.
Catadioptric?
Yeah, that word. Yes, I just say catastrophic, but it's not. This is a real small lens. Again, a mirror lens. It does not have glass elements, and it has mirror system inside of it. It's essentially a small telescope, fixed f8 aperture, real small, and very, very light. It's the kind of thing you can carry all day long. And I keep coming back to this. One of the things I really like about a lot of these new lenses is that they all come in real close. This lens is a 400 millimeter lens, and it focuses down to a little bit over 45 inches, which gives you quarter life size. Now, I've seen images. I have not handled this. We don't have one yet. I do want to review this when it does come out. But the sample pictures are like of small flowers that fill the frame. And if you want to shoot things like insects, butterflies, flowers, and you can't get close to them, you don't want to disturb them or scare them away, that's what this lens is going to be ideal for. And I just recently did an article in B&H Explorer about this. Mirror lenses could be used for landscapes too, and a lot of other forms of photography where you need longer focal lengths. And you don't want to spend $1 zillion, and you don't want to carry around something that weighs, as much as a Volkswagen. That's what this is about. And this could make really great imaging and different imaging than we typically get with our, 24 to 70s and our 70 to 200 millimeter lenses. This is different. And it just sort of shakes you and makes you look fresh again when you start looking through your camera.
And it's donut bokeh. So you have the interesting design about the Tokina or mirror lenses in general.
You get the donuts. People love them or hate them, and it's really funny. It depends how they come out. I find they're interesting. Yeah. There's some pictures I know where I wish they weren't there, but for the most part, it's just part of the picture. It's part of what makes it all work. And again, it's worth it. It's all worth
exactly.
It.
There's people who love donuts and there's people who don't.
Right. Another thing they did here on this, which I noticed, one of the problems with mirror lenses, as they get older, they are actually mirrored surfaces. And unlike the mirrors that we have in our house that have glass in front of it, mirrored surfaces, like the mirror on your reflex camera, the lens, the mirror that goes up and down, there's no coating. If you touch it, you can scratch it very easily. And one of the side effects is that over time, they would oxidize and often turn yellow, which would affect the color of the image itself. And a lot of these older mirror lenses sometimes have a very warm tone, and that's because the silver on the mirror is oxidizing. And this new lens has protective antioxidants, so the color on this lens should remain truer throughout the life of the lens, or a lot longer than most mirror lenses traditionally last. And that's a pretty important thing if you're looking at this type of an optic. All right, Kevin, that pretty much covers everything we had on our list. Is there anything else that we might have overlooked that you want to add to this list?
Well, let me think. I mean, Nikon did come out with did announce teleconverters for their upcoming 70-200 VR lens. Is be a 1.4x and a 2x on that one. So that's something for when people get that lens out. That's something good for them. In the video realm, there was the Blackmagic 12K, which was announced. So that's good for like a lot of the video people out there. So you see, you have a lot of cameras coming out that are just high resolution, 8K on the Canon. You have the Panasonic, which is 5.9 or 6K, depending on how you set it up. Then you have a 12K camera. It's just crazy when you think about it. Like, who would think we'd reach that term that now, 2020, here's 6K and 12K. Jeez. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I think we covered a lot of that. There's been, in the lighting realm, the Profoto did put in an update with their B10 cameras, and you could set them off with your smartphone with the Profoto app.
Yeah, we had the Profoto guys on a couple weeks ago, so take a listen to that episode for some specifics from Profoto and lighting.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, it's pretty. We're getting to a good point in the industry when it comes down to fun and exciting things.
Are you seeing the industry, pick its head up, and should we expect a lot of announcements at the end of the year?
I think we may see some more announcements towards the end of the year, because something that the pandemic has done is kind of put the kibosh on a lot of the trade shows. So a lot of these companies are stepping up and saying, you know what, we could do our own thing and announce it on whenever we feel like it, like Sony did, Canon did it, Sigma has done it. So I think we're going to probably see a little bit more releases coming out soon towards the end of the year, maybe the beginning of next year, because there's no trade shows right now, and they have their own platform to be like, hey, stay tuned. Next week, we have a new camera.
Kevin, if our listeners would like to see more of your work or any of your work, where can they go?
Well, I am on Instagram. My tag is KGR Logic, LOGIC. That's where I have my travel photos. I haven't posted in a while, but I'm out there, answering questions on things. And as far as something that interests me these days, I've been really into photographer Liam Wong. He has come out with a book. If anybody's into like the whole cyberpunk-ish look of photography, so neon colors, he took pictures in Tokyo, and I've been following him on Twitter, and you can follow him on Instagram, his stuff. And he just came out with a book. It's called Tokyo with double zeros. It's really, really good. It's really fun, and it makes me get a little bit of wanderlust as well. So
that's great. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. It was terrific having you on the show. Your knowledge shows right through. It was great listening to your insights on all the little toys we were talking about here today. And if you are not a subscriber to the B&H Photography Podcast, what are you waiting for? Simply head on over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you subscribe to podcasts, and sign up. And remember, you can always find this on the B&H Explorer website and the B&H Photography Podcast group page. Until next time, on behalf of John and Jason, my name is Alan Weitz, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in today.